welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, aka The White Weirdo, and this video we're breaking down Black Widow. The brand new Marvel movie stars Scarlett Johansson, and it very much feels like a closing of the book on Natasha Romanoff's story. The film culminates with a big cliffhanger that sets up a showdown between Yelena Belova and Hawkeye, and maybe if Nat had have been a better cliffhanger, we wouldn't have been here in the first place. Thank you, I'm here all week now. We open with Nat's childhood in 1995. Nat is part of a spy family made up of her father Alexei, mother Melina, and sister Yelena. This movie is very much about a family, and I was half expecting Dom Toretto to show up and catch Black Widow falling from the sky on the bonnet of his car. Now interestingly, Nat's origin very much mirrors Val's backstory, as in the comics she was part of a sleeper cell family working inside an anti-communism movement. This was for the organisation Leviathan, and clearly she's not adverse to manipulating people, and this may be because she herself was manipulated when she was younger. There's very much an idea of ruined childhoods in this film, and Nat's is destroyed when her father infiltrates the North Institute in order to steal S.H.I.E.L.D. secrets from the Hydra front. They have one last meal together before leaving the country, and this idea of final suppers appears at several points in the film. Now the info he stole included a map of the basal ganglia, which is the part of the brain that controls decision making and choices. Hydra of course were masters at manipulating this, and it explains how they were able to control Bucky's mind in The Winter Soldier. The family have to flee, and after landing in the Russian ally country of Cuba, Nat and her sister are enlisted into the Red Room program. This is a female assassin division headed up by a man named Dreykov who wants to create an army of all-girl assassins. We learn that during the mission in Budapest, Nat made an attempt on his life, and his daughter was also apparently killed during this. However, she survived, and Dreykov transformed her into the Taskmaster, an almost unstoppable assassin that is able to perfectly mimic her opponent's fighting styles. Now I know a lot of people will be annoyed by this reveal, especially as it reduces one of the best characters in Marvel to being a mindless machine. In the comics, Taskmaster was responsible for training several people, and the change from Anthony Masters to Antonio Dreykov is probably going to leave a lot of people asking, but why? Now Taskmaster is played by Olga Kurylenko, and what's funny is she's one of the only Russian actors in the film, but she gets one line whilst everyone else is putting on the stereotypical accent. Anyway, the main plot takes place right after the events of Civil War. If you cast your mind back to that, you'll remember that she stunned Black Panther when he attempted to get Steve and Bucky at the airport, and after this she was warned by Tony Stark that Secretary Ross would be coming for her. Thus she went on the run, and mirroring this, her sister Yelena does at the same time too. It turns out that when Nat defected to the West, her sister was put through an updated run of the Red Room that used the stolen North Institute studies to brainwash her. Whilst out on a mission in Morocco, Yelena is sprayed with red mist that wipes the brainwashing from her, and this gives her back her free will. She realizes how evil the Red Room is and reaches out to her sister in order to help bring everything down. Now interestingly, the person who sprays her with the red mist is called Oksana, a character from the Black Widow comics that was heavily tied in with the Red Widow. The story of the film also seems to be based upon the Deathless Frenzy, which was a chemical serum from the comics that could highly alter someone's behaviour. Now sadly, I'm not sure how much this brainwashing plot works, and when Nat is unable to kill Dreykov because of pheromones, it's bad writing in my opinion. I really wish that they'd handled it with there not being any brainwashing at all, and Yelena simply saw her sister stand up to the government during the events of Civil War, which inspired her to do the same thing in her country. This would give her far more agency in my opinion, and it would make Natasha's legacy a lot stronger, as we could see how she inspired others to do good, rather than simply having a red mist MacGuffin that solves all problems. I think the film is metaphorically making a comment about men in power controlling women and getting them to act against their will, but to me it would just be much stronger if they made these decisions on their own, rather than having them just being mind controlled and then suddenly not anymore. Anyway, yeah, just my opinion there, but Nat and Yelena rescue their father Alexei out of prison, and they reunite with Melina, who we learn was paramount to the Red Room programming due to her scientific discoveries. As a family, they destroy Dreykov's headquarters, which look like a cross between the Triskelion and a helicarrier. Yelena kills Dreykov, and they bring down the base, with Nat having to skydive in order to save her sister, who doesn't have a parachute. She catches up to her, but Nat is tracked by Taskmaster, and the pair plummet towards the ground. Nat is able to free Antonia from the programming using a vial of red mist, and Antonia hugs her whilst asking if her father is gone. She's finally free, and though she could pop up in the MCU again as Taskmaster, I very much view her arc as being over, as she seemed like someone who didn't want to fight, so it's unlikely she'll be up for returning to the battlefield anytime soon. Nat apologises not only to her but also Yelena, who she feels like she should have gone back for after her defection. Nat decides to stay behind, and Yelena and co leave to travel the world, freeing the widows that are still subject to the Red Room's mind control. Yelena gives Nat her tactical jacket, which we see the character wearing in Infinity War. Ross's forces arrive, and weirdly, the movie cuts out rather than explaining how Nat managed to get out of the situation. To me, this was a very strange thing to do, and I think it just seems like they needed a reason for Nat to leave the family, but also didn't know how she would get out of Ross tracking her down. Either way though, she does, and we cut to 2 weeks later to see she's still on the run. Thus, we know that she didn't agree to hand herself in or go back with Ross. Nat meets with Rick Mason, who throughout the movie provides her with tech and also transports. He gives her a Quin Jet, and it is possible that this is the one that was found at the end of Age of Ultron, as we know the one the Hulk was in went to Sakaar with him. Nat decides to go home and patch things up, and we know that this vehicle was used by her and the Rogue Avengers during Infinity War. She travels off into the sunset to the Avengers theme, and we see fireflies drifting around a tree. This is symbolic on a number of levels, as we learn in the film that Nat's real mother was killed and she was buried under a tree like this. It also explains why the post-credit scene shows that Nat's grave has been placed under one too, and here we see Yelena visiting it. She's also brought her dog, which calls back to earlier in the movie in which she said she wanted to get one and have a normal life. She stands there crying, which is when Val shows up out of nowhere, offering her a job. Clearly from the dialogue we can tell that the pair have worked together, as Yelena says Val shouldn't be bothering her on her holiday time. When we last saw the character, she was recruiting John Walker, aka US Agent, at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now they did switch the release dates up for this, and that was meant to follow after Black Widow, but I actually feel that the scene works a lot better now that we know who she is. Now in the comics, Val was even a love interest of Nick Fury, so it makes sense that she's sort of taken on his Phase 1 role in forming the villains. DC clearly rushed Justice League in order to catch up with Marvel, and I always hoped that they would have taken their time with forming the Suicide Squad. I really wanted to see the villains in that pop up in other movies before they made it to the team, and it looks like Marvel are once again following their formula and taking their time. I can see Val popping up in a lot of films and properties in order to pull the villains together to either form the Dark Avengers or maybe the Thunderbolts. Val in the comics ended up becoming Madame Hydra, and it seems like she's up to no good, as she says to Yelena she knows who killed her sister and presents her with an image of Hawkeye. Now we know that there is currently a Disney Plus show in the works featuring the character and his protege Kate Bishop. This will be starring Haley Steinfeld in the role, and it's due to release later this year. According to the wiki, Florence Pugh will also be popping up, and obviously this post-credit scene is setting up their showdown. After the events of Endgame, Clint is probably still viewed in many circles as a vigilante, as we know he operated as the Ronin during the 5 years between the snap and the blip. There are several agencies that likely want his head, and I think with Yelena being the top assassin in the Red Room program, that she will have been selected first for the job. Obviously, we know that he didn't kill Natasha, but this has clearly been twisted so that Yelena will hunt him down. However, I think that it will be very much the undoing of Val's plan, and Yelena is obviously aware that her sister hid out with Clint during the Budapest mission. Therefore, I think Hawkeye will convince her he didn't murder her sister, and she will then join the Avengers, taking up the mantle of Black Widow, much like how she did in the comics. Val will then have to get together other members in order to form her team, and potentially the Avengers may track down the group and go head to head with them. Now before we get into our review, if you've enjoyed the video then please smash the thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe as we're going to be dropping a big video going through all the Easter eggs on the movie very soon. Now as for my thoughts on the film, I have to say I was a bit disappointed. I really wanted this to be a movie that encapsulated Natasha's home and how she inspired those around her, but instead I think it felt a bit hollow. I would have loved to have seen the Budapest mission in full too, and though the movie touches upon these aspects, it does seem a bit shallow in terms of the character depth that we get. The piece very much feels like it's a Yelena Belova origin story rather than a goodbye to Black Widow, and I have no idea why it exists because there's nothing here beyond her introduction that I feel was all that substantial. Taskmaster and Dreykov were a big disappointment for me too, and considering these characters have so much hype behind them, I was expecting a lot more. Now the movie does excel in its action pieces, and these are by far some of the best in the MCU. The core cast do a great job with Florence Pugh really shining, and I feel that Scarlett Johansson gives her best MCU performance thus far. It's just a shame that the stakes are really low and that the movie feels meaningless because we know what comes before and after for the character. This kinda removes the stakes a bit, and though it's nice finding out what made Nat the way she is, I think they just released this because fans demanded we finally get a film for her rather than the creators actually having a story to tell. For me, it's one of the more forgettable films in the MCU, and I've watched it 3 times now and still can't really tell you what happened in it. Overall though, I am excited to see what happens next, but unfortunately for me, this movie gets a 6.5 out of 10. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film, so make sure you comment below and let me know. As a thank you for interacting with the video, you'll be entered into a prize drawn the 30th of July, in which we randomly pick 3 comments to win an MCU box set of your choice. All you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. The winners of last month's competition are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of Loki episode 5, which will be linked on screen right now. It's absolutely packed with Easter eggs, so definitely go check it out, and I'll see you over there. With that out of the way, thank you for clicking this. I've been Paul. Take care of yourself. Peace.